August 21st, 1933. 500 feet above the outskirts of Moscow, Soviet Union. The ground shakes before the aircraft even appears. Workers in the fields near Kalinin aerodrome stop mid-swing, their scythes frozen in the summer wheat. Children point at the sky. Even from a kilometer away they can hear it, a thunderous drone that doesn't sound like one engine or two, but seven, screaming in unison, tearing through the humid afternoon air. Then they see it. The Kalinin K-7 emerges from behind a line of birch trees, impossibly low, impossibly massive. Its wingspan stretches nearly 174 feet, wider than a football field is long. The wings themselves are so thick that a man could stand upright inside them. The fuselage doesn't sit beneath the wing like a normal aircraft. It is the wing, a monstrous flying surface, with twin booms extending backward, each one housing a tail assembly. Between those booms dangles an enormous elliptical tail surface, completing the silhouette of something that looks less like a plane and more like a mechanical leviathan clawing its way across the sky. Inside the cockpit, test pilot Mikhail Sneguryov grips the control yoke with both hands. His knuckles are white. Behind him, co-pilot A.N. Smirnov monitors the instrument panel, calling out altitude, airspeed, engine temperature. Around them, seated in positions scattered throughout the aircraft's 120-foot length, are 17 other souls, navigators, engineers, observers. Some are positioned in the nose. Others sit inside the wing itself, surrounded by struts and spars and fuel tanks, monitoring structural stress. Sneguryov can feel it before any instrument confirms it, the vibration. It starts as a faint hum in the pedals beneath his boots. Then it climbs into the yoke. Within seconds, it's rattling his teeth. The entire airframe is shaking, rippling like a drumhead struck too hard. He eases back slightly on the throttles. The vibration doesn't stop. It intensifies. Tail surface oscillation, Smirnov reports, his voice tight. Vertical stabilizer showing excessive movement. Sneguryov knows. He's felt this before on previous flights. The K-7 has a temperament. Every test flight since its first successful takeoff on August 11th, just 10 days ago, has revealed the same problem. The massive tail surfaces, suspended between those twin booms, shake violently at certain speeds. Engineers on the ground have reinforced the structure twice already. Clearly, it wasn't enough. Reduce to cruising speed, Sneguryov orders. Smirnov's hand moves to the throttle quadrant. But before he can pull back, the vibration changes. It becomes violent. Sneguryov feels the yoke jerk in his hands, not from his input, but from the aircraft itself. Something is wrong, very wrong. Behind them, deep within the starboard tail boom, metal screams. A structural brace, overstressed, under-engineered, fractures. The crack spreads in milliseconds, racing through aluminum and steel. The tail boom twists. The entire empennage shudders, then begins to tear itself apart. Inside the port boom, engineer Pavel Kozlov sees daylight appear where there should be only riveted metal. He doesn't have time to shout a warning. The starboard elevator tears free. The K-7 pitches forward violently. Sneguryov holds back on the yoke with every ounce of strength he has. The nose drops. Airspeed increases. The vibration becomes a roar. In the passenger cabin, built into the wing's leading edge, observers are thrown against bulkheads. Papers, tools, clipboards become projectiles. One man slams headfirst into a support beam and goes limp. "We're losing the tail," Smirnov screams. Sneguryov doesn't answer. He's fighting. The yoke is nearly immovable now. The control cables either snapped or jammed. Altitude is bleeding away. 400 feet, 350, 300. The horizon tilts at a sickening angle. Trees rub in the end, the ship craft. They can't grow on the tail. Farmers below scatter in every direction. At 250 feet, the port tail boom separates entirely. The K-7 rolls inverted. For one surreal moment, the massive aircraft hangs in the sky upside down, engines still roaring, its enormous shadows sweeping across the wheat fields like the hand of a clock ticking toward midnight. Then physics takes over. The nose drops. The aircraft accelerates earthward. Snegioff closes his eyes. The impact is cataclysmic. The K-7 strikes the ground at over 120 miles per hour, nose first, just beyond the aerodrome perimeter. The wing, thick as a rail car, filled with fuel, crumples like paper. Fuel ignites instantly. The explosion is visible from Red Square, 7 miles away. A black column of smoke rises into the summer sky, twisting, climbing, carrying with it the ashes of 15 men and the dream of Soviet aviation supremacy. When rescue crews arrive, they find wreckage scattered across 200 meters. The wings are unrecognizable. The tail booms are gone. In the center of the debris field, still partially intact, is the cockpit. Inside, Mikhail Snegrirov and 4 others are dead. Remarkably, 4 crew members survive, thrown clear during the breakup, found unconscious in the wheat. But the Kalinin K-7 is gone, and with it, an entire chapter of Soviet engineering ambition. The story of the K-7 doesn't begin with fire and twisted metal. It begins 3 years earlier, in a cramped design bureau in Kharkiv, where a man named Konstantin Kalinin stares at a blueprint that would make most aeronautical engineers laugh him out of the room. It's 1930. The Soviet Union is in the grip of Stalin's first 5-year plan, a frenzied push to industrialize, modernize, and project power across a nation spanning 11 time zones. Aviation is seen as the key to it all, moving troops, transporting supplies, asserting dominance over the vast Siberian wilderness. But there's a problem. Soviet aircraft are small, slow, and limited in range. What the state needs is something unprecedented. Kalinin proposes exactly that. His design is radical. Forget traditional fuselage and wing layouts. Forget aerodynamic grace. The K-7 will be a flying wing, a massive, thick lifting surface with everything built inside it. Passengers, cargo, weapons, crew quarters, all housed within a wing so enormous it could swallow a freight train. Kalinin envisions 7 engines, 6 mounted on the wing's leading edge in paired nacelles, 1 in the nose, twin tail booms extending aft, a wingspan rivaling the largest structures in Moscow. Gross weight, 38 tons when empty. Maximum takeoff weight projected at over 50 tons. On paper, it's a masterpiece. In practice, it's a nightmare. Soviet manufacturing in 1930 is still decades behind the West. Precision machining is rare. High-grade aluminum is scarce. Structural analysis is done with slide rules and guesswork. Yet Kalinin presses forward, driven by belief and political pressure. Stalin's regime doesn't tolerate failure, but it rewards audacity. If the K-7 succeeds, Kalinin becomes a hero of Soviet engineering. If it fails, he doesn't think about that. Construction begins in 1931. The scale is immediately apparent. Workers assemble the wing in sections, each one requiring custom jigs and frameworks. The outer skin is corrugated duralumin, lightweight but prone to buckling. Internal bracing is a lattice of steel tubes. The cockpit sits high in the nose, offering panoramic views. Behind it, a main cabin stretches back into the wing's interior, with windows cut into the leading edge. Designers even include sleeping quarters and a galley. This isn't just an aircraft, it's a flying battleship. By 1932, the partially completed K-7 is moved to Moscow's Haidinka aerodrome for final assembly. It dominates the field. Visiting dignitaries and foreign observers stare in disbelief. Some are awed, others are skeptical. British aviation expert C.G. Gray, after seeing photographs, writes, "It's either the future of aviation or the most expensive coffin ever built." On August 11, 1933, the K-7 makes its first flight. Snegryov taxis the behemoth down the grass runway, throttles wide open. All 7 engines scream. The aircraft accelerates sluggishly, its weight fighting every inch of forward momentum. Then, almost reluctantly, the wheels lift. The K-7 is airborne. For 11 minutes, it circles Kodinka. Engineers on the ground cheer. Kalinin watches with tears in his eyes. The impossible has happened. His monster flies. But even during that first flight, the vibrations are there. Technicians note oscillations in the tail surfaces. Snegryov reports control sluggishness. Over the next 10 days, the K-7 makes several more test flights. Each one reveals the same issues: instability at certain speeds, excessive structural flexing, unpredictable handling. Engineers reinforce the tail booms. They adjust control cable tension. They modify engine placement. It isn't enough. On August 21st, the aircraft disintegrates mid-flight. The crash investigation is swift and politically charged. Official reports blame design flaws in the tail assembly. Privately, engineers knew the truth. The K-7 was too ambitious for the technology of its time. Material science, structural engineering, aerodynamics, all were pushed beyond 1930s limits. The aircraft needed computer-aided design, advanced alloys, wind tunnel testing that wouldn't exist for another decade. It needed a future that hadn't arrived yet. Kalinin proposes rebuilding. He draws up plans for a K-7 bis, incorporating lessons learned. But Stalin's regime has no patience for second chances. The project is cancelled. Kalinin himself falls out of favor. By 1938, during Stalin's Great Purge, he's arrested on fabricated charges of counter-revolutionary activity. He dies in a labor camp in 1942, his name erased from Soviet aviation history. The wreckage of the K-7 is quietly scrapped. No museum preserves it. No monument marks where it fell. For decades, the Soviet government barely acknowledges it existed. But the idea, the audacious, impossible idea, never completely dies. 60 years later, aviation engineers look at the K-7's design and see echoes in modern flying wings, in cargo lifters, in blended wing-body concepts still being tested today. They see an aircraft that understood where aviation was going, even if the world wasn't ready to follow. The Kalinin K-7 flew for less than 2 weeks. It killed 15 men. It bankrupted its designer and embarrassed a superpower. But it proved something that engineers in 1933 desperately needed to know: that the impossible could fly, if only for a moment. That imagination, even when it outpaces capability, can still lift 38 tons of steel and ambition into the sky. And that sometimes the greatest achievements aren't the ones that succeed, they're the ones brave enough to fail spectacularly, so that future generations know where the edge of possibility truly lies. The K-7 vanished from history, but how many other impossible machines were buried by war, politics, and fear? What else did the world forget? If you want to uncover more stories that history tried to erase, subscribe to www.2forgotten45. Every week, we bring you the aircraft, the battles, and the secrets that never made it into the textbooks. hit that subscribe button. Because some stories deserve to fly again.